Tonight on The Roast, Gina Rinehart remains world champion of Family Feud, and Tony Abbott claims sporting events on taxpayer funds. But first, what does M-A-K spell? Yep, it's Mac. Mark, I forgot the R.
Prime Minister Tony Abbott has apologised to Malaysia for his party's criticism of the country during the coalition's time in opposition. Also, he forgot Malaysia's birthday. Abbott explained that when his party was criticising Labor's Malaysia solution for dealing with asylum seekers,
our criticism was never of Malaysia, it was of the former government.
I would take your word for it, Tony, but I really love quotes. Have we got that Abbott quote where he's criticising the Labor government?
Imagine taking boat people from Australia to Malaysia, where they will be exposed almost inevitably to the prospect of caning.
That's strange. There must be an error in our system, because that criticism was about Malaysia, and Abbott said his criticism was never of Malaysia. Could I have another Abbott quote, please?
In the Malaysian community, people of uncertain immigration status are treated very, very harshly indeed.
I apologise, viewers. There's something strange going on with these quotes. Once we figure out what's wrong and our quotes start aligning with what Tony Abbott said at APEC, we'll let you know. The Prime Minister's Malaysia apology, of course, comes days after Tony Abbott apologised to another Asian leader, Indonesian President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. So it's been a productive few days for Tony Abbott. If we just take a look at how his time's been spent, it's been 60% apologising to Asian leaders, 30% shaking the Canadian Prime Minister's hand, and 10% thinking of the next occasion that will be appropriate for him to wear his killer purple APEC shirt. I'm thinking that gay wedding he'll never attend. Independent Senator Nick Xenophon, not to be confused with half werewolf, half vampire boy Eddie Munster, has weighed in on the travel expenses scandal. On ABC's 7:30, Xenophon was asked whether he had to pay back any entitlements he wrongly claimed.
Yes, I have, and that related to having self-drive hire cars in Canberra.
And I think we have footage of Nick in one of those cars. I'll keep playing that footage until one of us dies, Xenophon. London cabs have arrived in Perth for a 4-year trial, allowing Perth's taxi passengers to experience the thrill of casual racism in a slightly different shaped car. The black cabs will be painted white, not dissimilar to how Australia's Got Talent imported British commodity Scary Spice, but changed it to ginger. And can Londoners expect to see Perth cabs on their roads soon? No! There's nothing iconic about Perth cabs. See? And finally, a number of defective petrol tankers have been taken off the road in Australia's eastern states, which means there's currently a shortage of petrol in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. No problems in Perth though, so things are finally looking up for Perth cabs. Australian Automobile Association Chief Executive Andrew McKellar has issued a warning to drivers.
Well, look, certainly we would urge against panic buying.
Phew! Hello Caltex, I have a credit card and I need all the petrol you have right now. For The Roast, I'm Mark Humphries.
Thanks, Mark. You should drive a hybrid like I do.
Well, la-dee-da. Good for you.
Hey, you leave him alone. He's doing his bit.
Next up tonight, John Hancock has withdrawn his application to replace his mother, Gina Rinehart, as head of their family's $5 billion trust, but is still giving his sister Bianca full support in her efforts. So the world is watching with bated breath to see which rich kid could win the family feud. It's Australia's own rags to riches story, where the rags are made of cashmere and the riches are made of a destroyed family unit. Now, on selecting a new head of the trust, Mrs. Rinehart told the court that she wants a family member with knowledge of the resources industry and no history of wanting personal favours, which will be tough to do because no one is going to believe you when you email them that.
Dear friend, I know this message may come as a surprise to you, but I have access to a large trust fund, estimated $5 billion, and I'm looking for a trustworthy person with knowledge of the resource industry and who does not want personal favours to take care of it. Urgent reply needed. Chat soon, dear friend.
And with an email that convincing, it's going to be hard for Mrs. Rinehart to find the perfect person. So until we find out where the money's going, let's take a look back at where the money came from and where that money is right now.
The Hope Margaret Hancock Trust is a $5 billion pile of money that Gina Rinehart's father, Lang Hancock, set up for his grandchildren, and a pile of money that Gina has been guarding like a Jabba the Smorg since she changed the rules of the trust to continue being trustee for years to come. A decision which has led to a legal battle between her and her children over who should be trustee, and a legal battle that will see Australian lawyers sleeping in 20,000 three-count sheets for decades to come. Yes, it's the trial that Australia's calling. But Mom, I want my money now! It all began here in 1952 when Gina Rinehart's father, Lang Hancock, flew a plane over land he owned in the Pilbara and was particularly alerted by the rusty-looking colour of it. It showed to him to be oxidised iron. By chance, he had discovered an iron field so big it would make generations of Hancocks unbelievably rich and stupendously unhappy. With barrels of mining money, he invested in the media and set up newspapers where he was able to express his opinions on topics like what he thought should be done with mixed-race Indigenous people in Western Australia.
I would dope the water up so that they were sterile and would breed themselves out in the future, and that would solve the problem.
Ugh. Can someone sterilise his mouth? What? Oh, good, he's dead. Send flowers. Enter little Georgina Hope Rinehart, who was born in 1954. She and Daddy Lang would do everything together. Mine together, go on international business trips together, and fight for the secession of Western Australia together. Normal father-daughter stuff. It was only when Lang remarried Rose Laxon shortly after the death of Gina's mother that their relationship soured, and the family tradition of shitting on each other publicly first began, with Lang saying of Gina in an open letter,
"Allow me to remember you as the neat, trim, capable and attractive young lady of the Wake Up Australia tour, rather than the slothful, vindictive and devious baby elephant that you have become. I'm glad your mother cannot see you now."
I love you too, racist dad. And after her father died, Gina would spend years in court with Rose as they fought over his estate, the beginning of another fine family tradition, protracted legal battles over buttloads of dosh. Which leads us to today, where with an estimated net worth of $22 billion, Gina Rinehart is the richest person in Australia, the fourth richest woman in the world, and first in line to play GR in Australia's remake of Dallas. And what of her children who are fighting for their grandfather's accidental billions? Well, there's John, Bianca, Hope, and Ginia, which is not short for Virginia, but rather long for Gina. Ginia is the youngest of the children and the only one to have sided with her mother in the case. So one can only assume that if Gina had given her other kids typo versions of her own name, she would have had less trouble with little Jean, Regina, and Ginny. It's either that or she should roll off that pile and give them all their goddamn money. But don't think for a second it's all feuding and turmoil for the Rineharts. They do spend some quality time together. In court, outside court, and at lunch at the Court Cafe. Because for the last couple of years, this mining dynasty has come to realise that family is the most precious resource of all. Because you can mine that resource for money. For The Roast, I'm Nick Richardson.
Finally tonight, Prime Minister Tony Abbott has been forced to justify further claims on travel entitlements after he charged taxpayers $1,290 to take part in the annual Port Macquarie Ironman competition. All part of his election promise of better roads, better schools, better abs. Now, yesterday we reported that Mr Abbott had paid back around $1,600 that he'd claimed for attending the weddings of Peter Slipper and Sophie Mirabella. Separate weddings, mind you, because... ugh. But for Tony Abbott, whilst weddings might be pleasure, fun runs aren't fun at all. They're business.
And ask yourself the question, is this a frolic or is this a very serious act of community engagement?
Well, I'm as fair dinkum true blue dinky dyed in the wool Australian as it comes, and I'm not so sure. Because engaging with the community is a pretty low bar to satisfy in order to have the taxpayer fund your love of sport. All you really need is other people and you have a community. Basically, unless you live in a sensory deprivation tank or a Sam Rockwell in Moon, you are engaging with the community all the time. If I talk to the guy behind the counter at my local mixed business, I'm engaging with the community, but it doesn't mean I can claim my bubble-o bill as a work expense. And Abbott's Ironman event wasn't a one-off. According to ABC's 7:30, last year Tony Abbott also claimed as an expense going to Cox Harbour for a cycle challenge, going to Wagga Wagga for its Lake to Lagoon fun run, and heading to Lorne for its famous pier to pub race, like some sort of giant tax fun run that we all donated to without being told. Now, Abbott said using taxpayers' money was justified, claiming these events were all community engagement. But if engaging the community is Abbott's justification, why not engage the entire Australian community by, for example, going on Q&A? And if exercise draws Tony Abbott to small towns and remote hamlets, well, Q&A might be able to use the same trick.
Coming up tonight at 8:30, Four Corners. Then at 9:20, Media Watch. And at 9:35, Tony Abbott finally joins Q&A on bikes.
And it could work because Tony Abbott loves to combine his sport with his politics.
I mean, the great thing about Polypedal is that it takes me to towns and communities, sometimes hamlets, that very rarely see a politician.
And that opens up a whole world of possibilities for small communities hoping to attract the attention of the new PM and perhaps get him to focus on some of their local problems.
I really can't tell you how much Tony is looking forward to competing in your triathlon. Oh, I mean, visiting your local community. There are just a few things I'd like to go through with you, though. The 3K run, I see here that the course actually goes through the maternity ward of your local hospital with an obstacle course involving humidity cribs.
Ah, yes, but unfortunately there is only one humidity crib, so it's not much of an obstacle course. But if Tony wanted something a little more challenging, we'd be more than happy to accept another one. For the betterment of the race, of course.
Of course. And what about regularly spaced drink stations? Because Tony does get very thirsty.
Oh, yep, that's not a problem, but I'm afraid it'll just be water that's been contaminated thanks to our grossly underfunded sanitation system, so there's nothing we can do about that, is there?
No.
Well, then Tony will have to be fine, which he will be. He's got a very strong immune system, not like those babies without the humidity cribs.
Well, that's all the time we have, and hopefully the last we'll ever hear about expense accounts or Gina Rinehart's trust fund. Oh, God, Rinehart heard me. Call must be in recess. Good night.